for certainly about 13 trillion, but he thinks before this is over it could be 20 or 30 trillion. The thing is that we're responsible for countrywide, should say for Citigroup, and we're already in the hook now for probably about $300 billion, but they have between Bank of America and Wells Fargo and Citigroup, they've got derivatives somewhere in the neighborhood of and credit default swaps of about 50 to 60 trillion dollars. And we've said they're too big to fail. We couldn't let them go down. If these credit default swaps and derivatives start to go, who's going to pick up the money? You are, ladies and gentlemen. What would $60 trillion more in our monetary base be? Why, it would be the end of our financial system as we know it. But nobody is telling the American people. All we're told is these banks are too big to fail. Well, they ought to fail because either they fail or our country fails. It would be far better off have them fail and start with some banks who would act responsibly. But you see, they're part of the establishment, and their intent is to destroy the infrastructure of our country, and we're well on the way. Go right ahead, Bob. I want you to get out your telephone number, tell people how they can get in touch with you and learn about the International Forecaster. And if you're out there in the listening audience, our telephone number is 1-888-24-LIBERTY. 1-888-24-LIBERTY or 464-8295. But let me repeat that. Certainly between Bank of America and Wells Fargo and I think Citigroup as well, they've got somewhere in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 trillion. That's terrible $1 trillion in credit default swaps and derivatives contracts. And since we have accepted that we're going to have to bail them out, where's the money coming from? Go right ahead, Bob.
The International Forecaster is about business, finance, social, and political issues worldwide. We publish via email on Wednesdays and Saturdays. Usually runs around 35 pages each time. And we have a hard copy that goes out twice a month for those who are not on the Internet. If you would like to receive a free introductory copy, you can do it one of three ways. You can go to our site. That address is theinternationalforecaster.com. theinternationalforecaster.com. Or you can email us at international_forecaster@yahoo.com. international_forecaster@yahoo.com. Or you can call toll-free 800-375-4188. That's 800-375-4188.
All right, fine. Well, let's go to Mark, who's calling us from Florence, Oregon. Hi, Mark. Go ahead.
Oh, hey, Dr. Stan. Hey, Bob Chapman. How you doing tonight? I wanted to ask you, Bob, one thing I wanted to ask, among maybe two things, is it was either yourself, Bob, or Gerald Salente. It had to be one of you two, if not both of you, who've expressed you have strong indication that the commercial real estate market is going to take a deep plunge here. The prediction I heard was when there are balloon payments which are coming due to much, if not the majority, of the commercial real estate in this country, such as strip malls, shopping malls, such like that, and perhaps other types of retail outlets, that's coming due in the middle of this month, is the best I can remember from the last I heard of it from one or both of you two gentlemen within the last several weeks on, maybe it was on Alex Jones and another show between the two of you.
Well, I reported on it.
Happen,
so,
I would
and those
like
figures are correct.
Extrapolate what it would actually
the problem,
look like.
Mark, let Bob go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
Okay.
The problem is that when people buy buildings, let's say the building's $1 million to make it simple, they don't put any money down. The bank carries the building, and they pay interest usually for 5 years, and then they renew the loan guarantee. And the service to the loan, ostensibly by agreement between the two parties, will come out of income. And the problem now is that income is dropping, and they can't make their payments.
Right.
So the banks, lenders, are going to get this back, all these buildings, and they're going to be assets that are being carried, say, at $1 million, which are now, if you mark them to market, probably going to be worth about $750,000, and in time they might go as low as 15 or 150 or 250,000. Wow. So this is another bridge that the banks, the lenders, have to cross, and I don't think they're going to get to the other side. It's really a disaster, and the main reason is the banks won't lend them any money.
What effect will this have on the economy in general, Bob? Will it be fast acting, so we're going to feel it right away? And what exactly, how is it going to manifest as far as the average American or middle class America goes, as well as lower middle class, so to speak, America?
Well, there has to be a lot of banks that are going to get in trouble at a middle size and small size, and those banks are going to be absorbed by the larger banks who are bankrupt too, but they're members of the Fed system or they're voluminous banks, so they'll get all the money that they need to buy out these smaller banks and enlarge themselves. And so
it doesn't portend ill for the average citizen, so to speak, who's having a hard time financially anyway. This is not going to, for instance, implode the dollar and cause a bank holiday, perhaps, where the dollar would be steeply devalued. And if that happened, possibly, what would be the next step of the government after that? Would they issue the new Amero currency?
Hold that thought right there. Go ahead, Bob.
Well, first of all, there's talk recently of a bank holiday, and I don't think it's in the cards right now. You got a stimulus package coming. You've got all sorts of money and credit being created and handed out like it was popcorn. And so this bank holiday that these prognosticators are talking about isn't going to come quickly. I think it's going to take a while. And so what was the other part of the question?
He wanted to know whether or not the collapse of the commercial property market would influence the average individual.
Actually implode the dollar, perhaps.
What's that?
Implode the dollar. Would the collapse of the commercial market implode the dollar?
Yes. That collapse of that market would not implode the dollar, but it certainly wouldn't help matters. And I hear these stories all the time, and I've heard them for the last 3 years about the Amero's coming, and it's going to be here next week. Well, they're all wrong. The Amero is passé. The North American Union was cut off at the pass.
I hope so.
We had to semi-abandon it for the moment. And
well, you gave me a little light at the end of the tunnel, Bob. I certainly appreciate you and Dr. Monteith's time, and God bless you all.
All right, thanks very much. Let's go to Mike, who's calling from Santa Cruz, and I think we're in for a very, very difficult time. I think that an awful lot of the people who had a fair amount of money and were able to buy these shopping centers are going to get into real trouble when, of course, they don't have the interest in, they can't make their bank payments. But what we are really seeing is the transfer of wealth from middle-income people and perhaps upper middle income, and even from some very wealthy people to the banks. That is how the system works. That's how it is set up. Certainly, the whole idea of banking is to make money and to claim assets. And that reason they have you put up assets so you can get a loan is so that when they change the rules, as they do, and they inflate the economy and everybody's buying and getting rich, and then they suddenly deflate the economy as they've done this time intentionally and maliciously, and then people can't make their payments. Why, of course, they lose the property, and you're seeing this transfer of wealth to the wealthy. That's what it's really about, but we can't let the American people know this is just a classic financial contraction engineered. Didn't happen, by accident. It happened by intent. It's ingenious, though, because since they control the media, the average individual is never allowed to understand there is a small clique who get richer and richer at the expense of the people who get poor and poor. Have anything else you'd like to comment on that before we go to Mike?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that the people who are really going to get taken apart are the upper middle class and the middle class. The low classes don't have a lot anyway. Not that they won't be hit, but the people today who've got money are not going to have money unless they own gold and silver-related assets and have prepared themselves.
I think that's a fair statement. When you move into an inflationary spiral and destroy the value of the currency, why you destroy everything that people have worked their whole life for, and that is the upper middle class and the upper middle class. Our telephone number, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 1-888-24-LIBERTY, 464-8295 here in the Central Coast of California, 464-8295. Let's go to Mike, who's calling